Hey, John.
Hey, I'm wearing a sweater because it's relatively chill here in Belton, South Carolina. It's not quite as chill. I have to refilm the thing. There's no snow on the ground. This is not a good thing. I know Wales. You get a stipend, right, from the Wales Tourism Committee, that it's always sunny and bright in Wales with your
so the United Kingdom, we're very big on our traditions, and this is a bank holiday weekend. It's our May bank holiday, May Day for all you socialists out there. Power to the people. But it's a national bank holiday, so the factories are shut. Everyone has a long weekend, and as is traditional, it rains. So from about midday on Friday, we've had 3 rainy days. This afternoon has been beautiful, I do have to say. So I've been sat out in the garden. I've been reading Hogwarts Professor. I've been reading Cervantes' Don Quixote, which I meant to read for quite a while. I've been reading that. I'm apologies everyone. I'm in holiday mode. This t-shirt is the most comfortable t-shirt I own. It's so comfortable and so old. I've forgotten where I've got it and what it says. It's largely illegible, but it's always a joy to talk to you, John. You've had a busy week, haven't you?
Yeah, we've been posting. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've been full-time writing. The good news is my wife's condition has improved so much that I'm not cooking full-time at my wife's insistence. She's very eager for me to get back to work, and maybe tired of my meals. Let's be completely honest. When you're married to a natural foods chef of no little accomplishment, the food has been nourishing, and I think it's had a high entertainment value for her watching me cook. The really smart guy with a PhD trying to cut an onion. That's fun for her. That's fun for her. Now she made a magnificent. I'd call it a pizza, but it's more of an Italian. There's another name for it.
Okay.
No cheese type thing. I mean, just a spectacular thing. Anyway, and I didn't have anything to do with it, Nick. I didn't have, other than eating. Back to my role of showing appreciation to saying this is spectacular. Anyway, but I've been doing a lot of writing. But at first, I want to hear about you. You read my post on the weblog about squibs.
Yeah,
I wanted to talk about Dimitra Femi's project she's doing, but you said no, John. It's not Tolkien. It's villages it's villages outside Tokyo. I'm like, what? Go ahead. Give me this.
Okay, so this is my theory of what the word squib means to J.K. Rowling. So she grew up in Gloucestershire, and neighbouring county in Somerset, one of its small towns is called Bridgewater, and they have an annual carnival, and it's a big deal. I mean, within the massive metropolitan world that is Somerset, it's a big deal. So they spend all year basically creating these floats and dioramas for the big parade. And then on the last day of the carnival, there is a fireworks festival. Usual sort of firework display, but the finale, the highlight of the carnival, are the Squibbers. And the Squibbers are a group of, I think that the most they've had was on the 400th anniversary of the carnival, which was in the 2000s at some point. They had 400 Squibbers, and Squibbers carry these sort of small barrels of gunpowder, basically, held on a wooden pole. Hundreds and hundreds of them. They light the gunpowder, and it showers up these smart sparks that rain down on them. Wearing of nylon is not encouraged, but it looks spectacular. And as this gunpowder sort of burns down, and you get to the bottom of the barrel, the plug, it goes boom, and then you can imagine hundreds and hundreds of these going off near simultaneously. It looks spectacular. It sounds deafening. It's a highlight. And have I got any evidence that she's ever been to this carnival or even knows about this carnival? Tangentially, yes. So,
a surprise.
Yeah. So, one of the Quidditch teams in Quidditch Through the Ages is a team from Toyohashi. Now, I know Toyohashi very well. It is my surrogate home in Japan. But you don't, John, and I'm willing to bet.
I mean, I'm a real Nipponophile. Yeah. I've never heard of Toyohashi. This is...
And I'm willing to bet that our many hundreds of subscribers, none of you guys know about Toyohashi either. I know about it because for many years there was a factory that I used to visit. For many years, twice a year, I would go out there, and the closest town was Toyohashi, and it was my home from home. It's a wonderful, friendly place. The food's amazing, the people are amazing, and
you fit right in, Nick. You look just like everybody in Toyohashi.
I do. I do. They consider me a local. I mean, even now the factory is closed, I still try and sneak back there for one day, just to reminisce about the old times. But they have an annual fire festival as well. Now, as with everything Japanese, it's all a little bit more dangerous and a little bit more crazy.
Seriously?
Yeah. They don't have as many people, but they have maybe 4 dozen, maybe 50 guys wearing loincloths, big, chunky Japanese fellows, holding these barrels of gunpowder.
Really?
And they look like scaled up squibs that I know from Bridgewater. They light these barrels, and again, very much like the squibs in Bridgewater, these showers of burning sparks go up in the air and sort of rain down on them. In the Toyohashi one, they have assistants with buckets of water pouring water over the guys that are holding these barrels to stop them burning themselves too badly. You notice most of them also have sort of shaved their head to try and avoid their head catching on fire. And then just like the Bridgewater event, as this barrel sort of burns down to the plug at the bottom, boom, you get this like a cannon going off, just tremendous
and they're
thundering
holding
noise. They're literally holding them, and you can feel this boom in your chest. It's and it's a spectacular, crazy, spectacular, wonderful thing to watch.
Are you wearing a loincloth right now, Nick? Are you actually a Toyohashi tornado here?
I will just demonstrate now. I am wearing regular jeans. Again, it's my holiday look. But this fire festival is locally famous within Japan. It is the only thing really that makes Toyohashi stand out. It's a small town. Maybe 70,000 people. It's not a big place.
Not enough to warrant a Quidditch team.
Not enough to warrant a Quidditch team. So I think if Rowling had heard the name or has read about Toyohashi, it's because of this fire festival that is so similar to one that is perhaps an hour and a half away from where she used to live in Gloucestershire. And this is a long way round of saying, even if you're not aware of the Squibbers at the Bridgewater Carnival, it's a common saying in the UK. If something fails to materialize that you were expecting to happen, you refer to it as that's a damp squib. So it's these little barrels of gunpowder. You get a shower of sparks. It burns down, burns down, burns down. You're expecting an explosion. And if it just fizzles, that's because you've got water into your squib and it's got damp at the bottom and you don't get the explosion. And people use this phrase commonly, not even knowing what it refers to. It's just it's a common phrase. Many people don't know that it's from these squibs.
Well, it's interesting because in Harry Potter fandom,
yeah,
and my really my reference for this kind of thing is the Harry Potter lexicon, Steve Vander Ark's incredible thing. And in it, a squib is defined as a failed firework. And in fact, a squib has become a damp squib.
Yeah.
Which makes the whole thing about Gandalf that Demetra Feeney, as in her really close reading of The Lord of the Rings that she's starting off about more in a second, but Gandalf talks about squibs and they're real fireworks. I mean, they're Gandalf level fireworks.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like firecrackers. They're not considered to be the Gandalf spectacular stuff. Kind of his throwaway things that kids hope that he'll drop accidentally, but they're not damp squibs. They're real squibs. But the damp squib thing makes that seems to be how Rowling is using it when she talks about magical people that don't play out as witches and wizards.
Yeah.
That they're damp squibs.
Yeah.
Or squibettes, whatever you call these things. All right. So that's okay. Thank you for the correction and for the enlightenment. Anything about Japan, I'm up for. Especially drums and fireworks, Nick.
Yeah.
Is anybody as crazy as the Japanese about drums and fire? I mean, just stand by with festivals with the drumming thing. I mean, giant drums, men on their backs,
That's right. That's right.
And fleets of them. I mean, it's just
and you have to stop and really concentrate to make sure in your own mind, is that man playing the drum or is that drum playing the man?
I mean, certainly the drum is larger than the man most.
Yeah.
It's just scary. All right. So those of you who are not Niponophiles, but on to other things, I mentioned Demetra Feeney's thing. Her Substack, which we link to often, and she's been on here a couple of times, and we're going to have her on to talk about Jason and the Argonauts, it seems, and Medea. That she is doing something that anybody that's serious about fantasy literature needs to be checking out. She's doing like it's like a capstone project on all of her scholarship. She's going to do a close reading of the Lord. I don't know how many years it's going to take her. She's doing it page by page. There's a lot of pages in the Lord of the Rings. And she is doing full scholarship reviews and wild things. I mean, the stuff she did on Gandalf's hat, I was just doing it like, gosh, all these pictures of Gandalf's hat. Now, I, of course, being that guy, said, no, Demetra, you've totally missed the boat on this. That hat is the shape of the hat is because of this, that, and the other. And she, great Demetra being as gracious as she was, just sort of patted me on the head, like, thank you, John, for that contribution. But seriously, I haven't been as excited about someone's work. No. Probably because I'm thinking of doing the same thing now with this grown-ups, Harry Potter for grown-ups volumes for Harry Potter. So I'm going back now to a work that I spent years studying, and now I'm coming back to it really with fresh eyes. And let me tell you, Nick, it's amazing how much more depth that book has than it had when I first read it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much better a writer Rowling has become since I first read her books. All right, that's the kind of a bit of an in-joke that my wife once cooked for some Marines in Okinawa, and the first week that it was a 30-day program to help them lower all sorts of blood issues and stuff, just to see if Marines ate well, would it improve their health. Mirabile dictu, Nick. It did. My gosh. They lost weight. They felt better. anyway, the first week they were just like, oh, this is terrible. This food is really bad. And Mary made that pizza thing I was telling you, focaccia or something. It's really bizarre thing. And they're kind of like, this is pretty bland and tasteless. And I heard the muttering, among this thing. Well, on the 30th day, she made the same thing. And all the Marines uniformly said what a better cook Mary was at the end of the 30 days than she was at the beginning, because this tasted so much better. And we were just doing that. Oh yeah, Mary's changed a lot over these 30 days, because they were no sugar, no added salt, no snack. They had just eat what they could eat fruit or something like that, but they couldn't eat anything off the menu that Mary was making. And so their palate had returned. I'm saying that's essentially what's happening to me as I reread Harry Potter now, having taken a significant break because of all the emphasis we've been doing on the new works, the standalone works, and the Corman Strike, just Corman Strike. Going back now to Harry Potter, with all the things, especially the Lake and Shed things, it's another book entirely. A lot, but it's remarkable how much of what we know about Rowling is now visible inside that book, when before, of course, we had no idea. So
in the early 2000s, she auctioned a first edition Bloomsbury Harry Potter hardback that she hand annotated. And it's one of the lost treasures of Rowling scholarship. Somebody very, very rich has this book right now, because it auctioned for hundreds of thousands of pounds then. It's going to be worth much, much more now. A pristine, untouched, no autograph first edition Harry Potter Bloomsbury hardback is worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. So goodness only knows what this would be worth. We know very little about what's inside it, but one of the things she writes is along the lines of this book is so important to me. As I reread it, I can picture where I am and what I was doing when I came up with the idea for almost every page. That her biography runs all the way through it. Maybe not on the surface, but it talks back to her just like it talks to us, because she can remember coming up with that idea. She can remember sitting underneath that tree, working out how the wands would work. The biography just runs straight through it.
Oh well, now Nick, I don't know if you're dredging in the lake here. I want you to be careful,
John. I've got a bone to pick with you. So you've been saying,
bring it, Nick.
So you've been saying for some time that you're writing a book. This is the year you're gonna write the book, and I discover that you spent all this time writing somebody else's book. So you've been typing out page by page the traditional theory of literature by Ray Livingston. Now this is going out to our paid subscribers. If you aren't yet a paid subscriber, and please, we're not hurrying you, but if you aren't yet, you do get, I think, two chances to, as a sort of a taster, open up a paid post. So do take a look at them. And just to make it clear to any lawyers that may be listening, this is a book that is in the public domain. It is out of copyright, but it doesn't exist anywhere. Is that right, John? There's no online capture of this book,
which is frustrating. I am not typing it up, Nick.
No.
My wife types it up as a labor of love, and because she knows that it would take me a month to type up one of these chapters. And I should say the text that we have, a reprinted edition of this book, is in like 6 or 7 point font. I mean,
Wow.
it's painful reading. And if anything, the footnotes, which are really, really important in any Perennialist book, most of the footnote stuff has stuff in it that is important as the text.
Yeah.
And these aren't footnotes, Nick, they're endnotes. And they're in like 4 point font, and they're all together. There's no spacing in between them. So Mary literally has like a microscope, that she uses to read these things and type them up. And they're also that Livingston just uses. I don't know if the University of Minnesota Press required this of him, but to save space, that's why they have this microscopic font. But he also uses abbreviations for everything. So that if he mentions a text once, he says hereafter, this is LIV, and that will show up, 3 chapters later, LIV, chapter 6, page so and so, and you're like, what is LIV? Maybe you didn't check that footnote. You certainly didn't memorize it. And so Mary sends me her draft typed thing of this, and I have to go through it, correct the typos because they're legion. It's really difficult material. And I have to go back to the notes because the original editor wasn't that good. So there's typos in the original text. So, and then I go on the internet and do a search and find all of the references, because many of them, especially the Kumaraswamy material, has been put up on the internet.
Right. Okay.
And so if they haven't been, they've been in collections, and I put links to the collections where that you can find this article. But I found most of the articles which are referenced. So if you read the footnotes and follow these things up, this is at least in between each chapter, you've got at least a week's worth of reading and education to do in the thing. Now, why am I bothering with this? Well, because it's what we're about. What Hogwarts Professor is trying to do is not just, I know this is hard to believe, all the harpies out there, like, oh yeah, this is all about the John and Nick show and how smart we are. It's really about trying to.
We are quite smart, John. Let's not do ourselves down.
Yeah. I can see Sandy out there laughing, like they're not that smart. Anyway, hi Sandy. All right. It is true that, and I bring up Sandy and Ed, and the best part about that series we did on this was to show that intelligent people using these tools make those discoveries.
Make amazing discoveries. Yeah.
If it was really about showing how smart John and Nick were, that show wasn't a very good promotion for that, because Ed and Sandy were doing what we were doing, and oftentimes much better than we were doing it. So the point of Hogwarts Professor is, yes, get at what Rowling is doing and what other authors are doing. But it's really about discussing the meaning and power of story in the context of what narrative means in human life, which is a lot more than deciphering mysterious elements or figuring out the future stories in a series, as fun as that is. Okay. Now that understanding of how narrative works in human beings requires a much larger view than that given in schools. When you study literature in schools today, though it may not be advertised as critique, which is really the postmodern idea of what literature is, that's what you're getting. And that view has a really low ceiling perspective on what it means to be human, and consequently of the dimensions of literature. That requires a much larger view than what you're getting in the schools. Because whatever they say it is they're doing in school, it's because the teachers have all come through academies in the last 20, 25, 30 years. What they're getting is critique, which is a postmodern perspective, offered as the only perspective, of course, which is what all contemporary views always advertise themselves as. And it has a really low ceilinged understanding of what it means to be human. And consequently, you have the dimensions of literature. Now, I mean, I wrote a book, Harry Potter's Bookshelf, which you can get as, Harry Meets Hamlet and Scrooge too. But both of those versions of that book, I wrote a book on just this subject, and it's throughout the weblogs thing. You can search that really easily, where I talk about the traditional view from really the interpretation of Mosaic texts. Mosaic, it sounds like it's a thing on the wall of the Pentateuch in the Old Testament. There's 4 levels of reading, so-called pardes, PRDS readings, or garden readings. That view, in that book, I talk about the traditional 4 levels of reading. And this is important for Western literature, not just for interpreting, scripture, because, Dante gets on board with it. In his letter to Con Grande, he says, I've written the Divine Comedy, then the Commedia, on these 4 levels. And almost everything consequent to that in literature, especially in the West, the best of it is written at 4 levels. One of the great American writers, the Southern Gothic writers, has said that if it's not written on the anagogical level, which is the 4th level, it doesn't last. It doesn't really touch what a human being is. And those 4 levels are the surface level, which is like sense perception, because all the levels correspond to a way of human knowing. So that when you read the story, you're following the story the way that you look around the room. You're taking it in. The next level, which is the moral level, is your opinion. Is this good or is this bad? Is this evil or is this virtue fostering? Is this socially correct? Politically correct? And that's pretty much where critique stops.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the limit. And that's really where literature begins, however, because the next level is the allegorical level, which corresponds not so much to opinion as to science, that you're going to be looking at all the data like you do in science and come up with the principle that is revealed in all that data. And the allegory is the thing that you're seeing through the window of the story substance. What's going on inside the story, you're going to see through it to some other referent. Right? And that's, and that can be simple tit for tat type things. And people that write allegory that's really a depth don't like to be accused of writing allegory, which is a connect the dots type thing. Like, imagine Tolkien was accused of writing an allegory about World War II inside the Lord of the Rings. And that really miffed him. Because it's so much more profound than that. And to be told that he was just writing a mechanical allegory, that was,
and I think many people have misrepresented his response to that. So his response to that was no. And they've read it to Tolkien didn't intend any allegorical level of his writing, which of course is, I mean, just beyond credibility.
That's right. I mean, a Vatican I Catholic writing a work of that dimension, and a man that could speak, languages that no one speaks anymore, in terms of Norse mythology and things like that. I mean, this is beyond credibility. Now that so allegory has a profound element, and there's also it can be borderline invisible, like the astrological stuff that Michael Ward has demonstrated is really the backdrop and the atmosphere that colors everything inside the Chronicles of Narnia, that is invisible to almost all readers, and yet creates their imaginative experience of the work. And really the Christological content, which people complain about, is just too in your face. Too Aslan is Jesus. Oh wow, this is just an evangelical tract. And what they don't understand is behind that is allegorical artistry so profound that it permeates their subconscious experience of the work, which is where it really hits you. And that bleeds into the last. So you've got sense experience, you've got opinion, then you get scientia, knowledge, and allegory, and finally you get to the anagogical level. The word that nobody has ever learned in a comprehensive English class, and yet should be the whole point of studying literature. And that's corresponds to the wisdom level of human knowledge. And wisdom is really different than all the other types of knowledge in that it's not something that you have, it's something that you become. It literally transforms you. And that's really at the level of reading through your logos capacity. And that's not just your reasoning facility. That's much more towards this transpersonal noetic faculty, your heart. You're reading from your cardiac intelligence. And that's when you get into things like alchemy and ring composition and that's the real symbolism, symbolism understood properly. That work is the profound work that resonates through the whole person and transforms them, makes them a more empathetic person, makes them a more neptic or watchful person. They start thinking about their own thoughts because they've been reading Sherlock Holmes. They start to try to think like Sherlock Holmes, and they see transformation in story, and they've entered into the story, and they experience the catharsis of the people inside the story. They're as transformed in a way as the people are inside the books that they're reading. And that's the power. That's the power of literature. And it requires that you believe that a human being has these capacities, Nick, and that there are supernatural reference to which the transparencies allow you to see. Now, if you live in a materialist, atheistic, socialist world, Nick, then those things are at best opaque to you. And usually they're things that you just can't, you have no grips on to follow. And so what we're after here at Hogwarts Professor is to introduce, the tools and that perspective so that you can grasp what Rowling is about and use those tools yourself. Now you don't have to be an old calendarist Orthodox Christian, Nick, to want to do this.
You don't? John, no. John, you've changed your tune.
Yeah, people should know that in the what do they call it? What's the ink black heart thing, Nick? The moderator back channels. And moderator back channels, everybody is that's on there is has to submit to John's crushing evangelical push for them to have their come to Jesus meeting. Anyway, just look at the people in that moderator back channel and you'll see that none of them have decided that was something they needed to do. But this book, Ray Livingston's book, the reason that Mary's typing it and that I am spending a day or two every week now, it's only 7 chapters long, really. So it won't take this long to do it, is to make available online to people that, to the paid subscribers, fine. And people that get there's some sort of device, Nick, that you can get into the thing if you want to get into it a couple times. This work is really valuable because it's the only text that I found. Now there are books. Well, we'll talk about that, but that's why I'm doing this, Nick.
Yeah. So the first chapter's gone out to everyone. It's not a subscribers only post. And we've got a table of contents. We've got the preface. We've got a prologue.
And now, it's labeled chapter 1 inside the thing. It says prologue, chapter 1. I'm like, come on, Ray. What is
make
it?
your mind up. Yeah. So but my initial thoughts, because of course I haven't seen the original text, because there's a glossary. I mean,
Yeah.
so my initial thoughts was, but this is a guy, Ray Livingston, was trying to make up the page numbers. But if he's going for such tiny text, that can't be true. So, I mean, why does a book on literary theory need things like a glossary?
Yeah. And then if you look in the comments underneath that first chapter, someone immediately said, John, what about symbolism? How does symbolism play into this? And I go to the glossary, like, oh, come on, it's going to be in the glossary. And he didn't include symbol in the glossary. So I was like, oh, great. So I went through it. I tried to explain what symbolism was in a Substack post comment box. I think I'm going to have to clear my throat.
Let me put a marker up.
Talking about throat clearing, here I am. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Livingston is trying to introduce an alternative view to conventional readings. At that point, was largely debates about reading at depth. Northrop Frye, the whole Chicago school of interpretation, and critique wasn't that hadn't so dominated the field, but even in the much more sympathetic to traditional views literary theory that was prevalent in the early 60s, late 50s when he was writing, already the post-Enlightenment modernity of things was taking over. Livingston's offering this traditionalist or perennialist contrary view to it, and he's working from three men who at that point were the only people that are really writing this. The whole second generation of perennialists and third generation hadn't sort of come on the scene yet. And those three men are Ananda Kentish Kumaraswamy, Ceylonese man who grew up and was educated in England and lived largely in the United States. Curator of art at the Boston Museum of Art. Fascinating character. And then Rene Guénon and Fritjof Schuon, both of whom were Sufi sheikhs that were educated that were Europeans, one French, one Swiss. Schuon, spent most of his mature life in Indiana, of all places. But anyway, those three men, they used words in ways that are almost upside down from how we use them. And I've talked about this before about, when you see the word intellect, Nick, as a reference, we think of intellect or an intellectual as someone who just thinks a lot about ideas, usually in strong academic tones. If you say someone's an intellect, you mean that he's got advanced degrees, and though we certainly know a lot of people with PhDs who aren't that smart, right? Okay, let me say that before somebody else does. All right, but the word intellect, the way it's used by traditionalists, has a very specific meaning, which is quite contrary to how we use that word. That intellect that word is distinct from someone who is reason-based, someone who believes that reason is the highest human faculty for understanding and discernment. That in Greek terms, you have knowledge, which is episteme, which is that kind of reason-based work, and then you have Sophia, which is wisdom, and you have faculties that are correspondent to that. So that reason is one thing, and that gives it's a fallen human faculty, and you work your way through data, and you get that kind of scientia episteme. And then there's wisdom, and there's a direct perception faculty for that. I mean, I've called it the cardiac intelligence, the heart, as it's referred to in Christian scripture and Hebrew scripture. But that intellect in Greek is called the nous, N-O-U-S, in English characters. That nous or noetic faculty in Latin becomes intellectus, which when in the Enlightenment you start talking about intellectuals, they denied the existence, or they separated them entirely in human understanding. So that intellect properly was for wise men who were more like saints than academics. They had direct perception of the real. And we know how important the real is, right, Nick?
Yeah.
But if you don't understand intellect as noetic faculty, rather than reason and knowledge acquired by study, rather than by personal transformation, then when you read that book, you read a book by a traditionalist, and he's throwing around the word intellect, which to the traditionalists and really the five great revealed traditions, this transpersonal faculty is what creates the entire human person, to include the discursive mind, and the human body is actually created by that larger faculty. In the modern world, that faculty doesn't even exist, and the world that it perceives is also delusion. So anyway, and you can go through all of those words. That's why you need a glossary, Nick, and that's why you also need that's also why you need a prolonged introduction.
Yeah.
You're entering a brave new world, and you need a map, and you also need one of those little language guides. Those little what's that? There's a series of books.
Baedeker.
Baedeker, or there's also one, Wild Planet or something, or something Planet.
Oh,
Planet.
yes, yeah.
You need one of those books that you can open up and say, oh, Monty Python has the great scene where a guy comes into a tobacco shop, and he's got one of those books, and the book quite comically, someone's just put in perverse phrases.
My submarine is filled with eels.
And the man looks like, pointing at the tobacco. All right. But this language guide, that glossary, is actually quite helpful, and you need to read it. You need to read it, because this is quite difficult work, because it involves looking at your own eyeballs and seeing, wow, there's a whole other way to understanding it, and this will help me understand the works by authors that use traditional tools that assume that you're familiar with this, or that you share that perspective.
It can be quite daunting. I mean, we've got the second chapter up, Man, Society, and Art, and that is, and this is someone who's just come off the back of reading Robert Browning. I'm going to say it's quite a dense read. So it looks like he's packing the whole perennialist idea into that one chapter. Does he expand on that in future chapters, or how does that fit in?
Yeah, I mean, this is I'll include links below. I've done this in the previous posts about perennialist things. There are not a flood of books that introduce perennialism, but there's several. Most perennialist books are anthologies of essays that sort of hang together. Yeah, they hang together because they're collections by one guy, or they're collections on a subject that somebody has done, to put them all together. They don't really read, beginning to end as a rule. So trying to figure out what perennialism is, there have been some very helpful books that have been written about this, and I'll put links to those down below. Those books give you they're the big overview of perennialism, and there's going to be one chapter in there on art, sacred art versus modern art, or profane art, really, sacred and profane. And in that chapter, literature is going to be another subcategory. It's going to be non-liturgical sacred art story. So you're well down the chain there. You're not going to get a lot on literature, except in the context of how perennialists view everything. Livingston's book is that upside down. He's focusing just on that tiny subset. That's the book that he's trying to talk about. And he's doing it, again, before there was a lot of perennialist material. Like Martin Ling's books don't exist at that point. That doesn't come out really until the early 70s. Reading Shakespeare as a sacred art. That really invaluable work isn't there yet. Now, there have been essays about Shakespeare in Studies in Comparative Religion, which was a journal, but there was no work. Instead, you just had Coomaraswamy stuff, which was spread globally, Nick. I mean, in obscure Buddhist journals, just wild to see these things. That's why the internet's been wonderful, because they've been able to collect these things. They're all in public domain now, so they're available. Livingston's work is upside down in that he's going to be talking about that entirely. But to do that, he has to introduce it so that you understand man, society, and art, which is the title of that chapter. You've got to understand what a human being is before you can understand how human beings live together and organize cultures, so-called civilizations, so that the human being can actually be a human being. And then you have to understand the function of art inside that culture. What does art do? And you get the distinctions there between sacred and profane art. Now, Nick, if you're like everybody else, to include me, when you hear sacred art, you think, oh, that's religious art. That's stuff you see in museums or in churches. That's not what sacred art is. Sacred art is any kind of artifact, to risk being circular here. No, it's an artifact. I've got my back scratcher here, Nick, because unfortunately, when I'm up late at night, I want to scratch my back. I need my little tool here. Now, this is profane art. This helpful thing. It doesn't do anything. It gives me great relief if my back is scratchy, itchy. But it doesn't. I don't look at this and feel that my heart and its capacity to perceive what is real is being fostered. These very practical items and sacred art permeates everything in a traditional culture, which is, say, a theocentric culture, so that the architecture, certainly of even commonplace dwellings, has that effect. Like the yurt is a perfect example of that. The yurt is sacred art. It reflects cosmology and elevates the human person from a mundane understanding to some contact with what's real. Now, does it have religious content? It can. Certainly, religious art done properly is sacred art, but religious art that simply tries to excite your emotions or to impress you with the grandeur of the scope of the thing, that's not sacred art. That's profane art with a religious subject. Now, you get to story, and if you say that Rowling's work is, some people argue that it's a sacred text, and I'm like, and they're arguing that.
There's that really strange podcast.
That's right. Which post trans conflict, they sort of disappeared. But that idea that it's a sacred text, like a revealed text, like scripture, is either to have a very perverse understanding of scripture or to elevate contemporary fiction to a place it doesn't belong. But you can say it's a sacred art, a non-liturgical sacred art, in that it's a tool. The author is using tools and images and symbols that will have this effect on the human person. Okay, that is not in any real sense, religious. It's not a form of worship. It's not a form of adoration and graces and mercies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. I'm reminded of a wonderful conversation you had on BBC Radio 4 with Beatrice Groves, talking about this very subject. If we'll put a link in below. If I'm not sure if you can hear it in
Was
the
it on
States.
was it on the one on pilgrimages?
No, this was on sacred art and sacred texts and Harry Potter.
Well, the very thing we're talking about. Gosh, I love it, Nick, when you remember things that I've done that I can't, I just have no memory of. I'm going to say for always, he remembers it because Beatrice was on it. But anyway, this is anyway, that is to really get what Rowling is after and the power of her story. You've got to get that. And so Livingston in that second chapter, yeah, he's got to give you what a human being is. Human being is basically a spiritual being first, whose life as such has to be fostered by a culture which is going to constantly remind him in a world of forgetting that that's what he's about, and that he has these capacities, which otherwise, just the ubiquity and the power of sensual images is going to make him neglect. And then to find those arts in story, because man really is the storytelling animal. He lives by the narratives that he uses to filter out all of these experiences. And so story has an extraordinary power that from a conventional view is not understandable. I mean, I've got a whole bookshelf, Nick, of books that try to explain the power of story from an evolutionary viewpoint, that there's a reproductive advantage in storytelling. And let me tell you, it strains belief. It strains when there's so much more obvious, though challenging, view on this. And that's why I'm doing the Ray Livingston thing, is to make that available and to those people who are interested in it. And as a backdrop to our conversation here, because that's what we're really after. And that was this one thing that we posted this last week. Oh my goodness!
Sure, that's enough, isn't it, John? That's enough. No, you've been posting about cryptonyms as well. So the long-awaited second cryptonyms post is up.
Yeah, I've got how many? You have access to the drafts mountain inside our Substack site, Nick. I think we're at 25 or 30 drafts in there. There, things that I've promised that I haven't written. But hey, the hold up. There was Great Lent, so I have a pious excuse. There was a move across the United States. Come on.
Yeah.
And there was sloth, which is always a good excuse, right? All of those things, and the distraction with other interesting topics. Nick, you keep dropping bombs on me, like, hey, how about we read Robert Browning? How about I Capture the Castle? Oh, Nick, John, you recommended I read Till We Have Faces. So now you've got to go back and reread all of C.S. Lewis. Okay, thanks, Nick. Anyway,
you always come back with, I recommended you read it, Nick. I didn't think you'd actually go ahead and do it.
Yes. Yeah, I got to be more careful with those throwaways. I actually sometimes send you links like, I really think you should read this. And I don't think about the consequences to my own life of that. Anyway, but it worked out, as these things do. I mean, that delay set things up nicely. I wrote that first Cryptomins thing, and I had two drafts. I should say the first draft had 30 names that I was going to do. Really?
Yeah.
There's maybe I could have done that on the weblog, because there's no limit on the weblog. But on Substack, you get these little alerts, Nick, saying, sorry, this is too long. You're over your mail limit. I'm like, oh, okay. And I get there around like 6 or 7 names. I'm like, okay, I guess So I try to cut it off at 10. So now I got 3 10s. And the first 4 names in the second list are about lions. Well, Nick, Ed Shardlow's
Yeah.
just done this lion catalog, which that's I love that Ed did that because A, I didn't have to do it, and two, he did it better than I would have done it. And now we can refer to that and Ed's comments on those things while I talk about the names that have lions in them. Let me see the first. I don't have that text right in front of me. But the first four are Dandelion,
Yeah.
Hafsa Muhammad. That was
Yeah.
fascinating. Uh, uh, Lion, the kid that kind of drives the whole book, and then Johnny Leonard Ropey. And that's fun. And then I'm doing work now also on the alchemical lions. So that all made part two's appearance timely, as if we planned it this way. Anyway, I love it. We joke again on the moderator back channel that Rowling and company, as part of their parlor games at parties, they throw things out to fandom and they laugh at the stupid things we do. That my theory is that Sleep Tight Evangeline is not actually the title of Strike 9. That Rowling played a game with her friends at that pub in London and said, look, I'm going to tell the world the title is Sleep Tight Evangeline. And we're going to see what these knuckleheads do with that title. They're going to twist themselves in the knots trying to figure out what this means. And I'm going to let you in on it so you can see what we do in my world, in Rowling, Team Rowling land. I have to wonder sometimes if Rowling doesn't put things into her books just to see if we'll just head down that rabbit trail. And it's nothing. As often as not, though, as to say, every single time in my experience of reading her work for 25 years, that has not been the case. That you follow things down the road, there is something down there. And the prevalence of lions in this book and the importance of lions in traditional literary alchemy, you have to follow that trail. You have to follow that trail and figure that out. So the names, it was a nice segue, into that.
Into alchemy. So we've been talking about alchemy for a few weeks now. So we've been talking about Jungian alchemy and perennialist perspective of how Rowling uses it. But your latest piece, fresh off the press piece, Literary Alchemy of Hallmark Man, is much more of a straight reading or an interpretation. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm not talking about literary theory in this one so much. It's not going to be, is Jung right? Is it right to read this through a psychological lens, or should you use the literary lens? Because Rowling is both, profound writer and amateur psychologist. So I mean, which one is the better way to do it? I'm not doing that here. This. You've read my notes on this, Nick. This text is about how to understand Strike 8 first. The alchemical view of it is how to see it in light of the series sequence of alchemical stages. And there's a reason it's taken me 6 months plus to talk about this. And just reviewing the material that's available online about this, I came up with 6 ways that you can think of the series structure, which we now have to say, okay, it's 10 books, Nick. We finally have that solid. It's 10 books. And the most prevalent way of reading it is to say it's a straight up series of 10 books, the tetralogy. And there's no particular connection between any of those books in the series. You know, I would say, what, 99% of the people reading these books aren't thinking about the series structure. We are, and the 5 other ones are about that. Now, the first way is to think about it in terms of chiastic structure or ring composition. Louise Freeman is working on a double ring idea, and that makes sense, Nick, right? Because the Harry Potter series was a magnificent ring as a series, in addition to each one of the books being rings. And we know from our close reading of just Hallmark Man, not to mention the work I did with Running Grave and Troubled Blood, that the individual chapter sets, the parts of the books are also rings. And so pulling back from it, and we saw in what I did with Running Grave, we saw how that Running Grave closed off that 7-book series ring very much like this, the set there. But we've got 3 more books. So how the series ring is going to work, I don't know. But that's obviously a tool that people are using to try to understand how the series is going to play out. Now, there's also, you can look at the series and say, like we have, Nick, that it's a 7-book series with a trilogy finale.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there are, then there's the Tetrachus theory that Evan Willis has championed, where you see the first 4 books as a set, and then there are going to be 3 books that are a set, and then 2 books and 1 book. And the first 7 books are in parallel with Harry Potter, and then the next 3 are going to include Hallmark Man, which I think Ed Shardlow is writing something, Nick, on, is that it's going to be that it paralleled the Ichabod.
Yes.
All right, and so we can assume that the next books will be Christmas Pig and Casual Vacancy, and my hope, of course, is that book 9 is Casual Vacancy, and that will get strike 10 will be Christmas Pig. But that's that perspective. That's really a challenge.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of Evan's theory. I've written a post in support of it, but I haven't heard anybody else anywhere else refer to it. Nick, have you? I mean, is
no.
it? I mean, you follow Strike fandom.
Yeah.
Have you heard anybody talk about it? All right.
No. I think it gets more challenging to really buy into a theory the more complex it becomes. And I think, but don't get me wrong, all we need is for J.K. Rowling to post that diagram once.
Yeah, when you have those 4 dots, 3 dots, 2 dots, 1 dot.
It'll be just another of those things that we always knew.
That's right. That's right. Everyone will forget the fact that they dismissed that idea as nuts. And hey, isn't this our moment, Nick? Is this when we talk about ectopic pregnancies?
Chapter
is this
3.
we say?
Chapter 3. I don't know. Have we mentioned this before? I'm not sure.
Got to have our drink there on the mentions of is Robin sterile? All right. There's 2 other theories. One is the series structure. That's sonnet form.
Yeah.
B. Groves seemed to that came up in a comment, and I asked the person to expand on that. There's a link down below to that. B. Groves, because she actually understands sonnet form, she thought that was great. Yeah. Being poetically borderline illiterate, Nick, I haven't really got my head around that yet. And then there's extended play theory. Now, extended play theory, we call extended play theory. It's also been called the Havening theory because it really came into play after Ink Black Heart. And the Havening experience inside Ink Black Heart would be because the 10-book series was cut in half, 5 and 6, 5 books in the front, 5 books in the back. That idea is that the last 6 books of the series are couplets, so that Troubled Blood and Ink Black Heart are a set, Running Grave and Hallmarked Man are another set, and Sleep-Tide Evangeline, or whatever the real title is, and the last book are going to be the last set. Now, the engine behind that theory, as I think her name was Catherine, I don't think she gave me permission to use her last name, was that we wanted to explain how the series could still be seen in parallel with the Harry Potter books. Now, remember, this was right. This theory comes up right after Ink Black Heart. We haven't had Running Grave, and how neatly Running Grave kind of tied off. All the parallels with Deathly Hallows, and then how the books in the series worked. We didn't know that then. But Catherine's idea was basically, hey, look at what Rowling and Warner Brothers did with the last book of Harry Potter. They made it into Deathly Hallows A and Deathly Hallows B, which is then what they did with the Hunger Games and with Twilight. And you could even say that, making The Hobbit into 3 movies was also these kind of extended play ideas. Let's make more, instead of making $1 gazillion once, let's make $1 gazillion twice. Let's cut that book in half. But the other part of it was, hey, we know that the last 3 books in the Harry Potter series, we know because of textual evidence, not because of author testimony, that the last book, the last 3 books, Order of the Phoenix was the Negretto novel, the Black novel. Sirius Black dies at the end of it. Order of the Phoenix. Half-Blood Prince is the Albedo book, the White book. And Albus, Dumbledore's name means white, he dies at the end of that book. And as at that point we predicted about the finale, that it was going to be the Rubetto, or the Red book, and someone whose name was Red was going to die in that book. And really, Nick, if you had been selling insurance, Rubius Hagrid was looking like it was not going to make it through the book.
Well, I mean, the author has testified it was touch and go for Hagrid in that final book.
Apparently, only the sister saved Hagrid, right? The sister said, "If you kill Rubius," and this is how prevalent the alchemical thing got by the end of the series, and people were openly saying, "Oh my gosh, she's going to kill Rubius," but instead she killed Rufus Scrimgeour right in the start. Hey, I've already killed one redhead, one red named thing, and then she killed Fred Weasley. One moment of silence, please, Nick. Death of Fred. All right, that. So we know that the last 3 books went black, white, red, and then William Sprague came up, showed us that the first 3 books were reverse alchemical, and that the first book was the reverse Philosopher's Stone creating thing, which is the Rubetto, and then the second book was the reverse Albedo cleanup. Harry winds up filthy in Dumbledore's office, and then the third book was the reverse Negretto, where we get Sirius Black. Now, and so we went red, white, black, all 3 series in the Triwizard Tournament things, and then we went black, white, red coming back. So it was a perfect ring alchemically, with those things being, all the two red books forming the latch, and then the white and the black books in the sequence. All right, maybe that's a lot more people want to know, but what essentially Catherine was saying with exploded play theory was the first 3 books are reverse alchemy, and Louise Freeman wrote a post saying that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was supposed to write a post explaining how Goblet of Fire is all 3 of those stages, and I eventually will write that post if this works out. And then she said, look, we've got Troubled Blood and Ink Black Heart, and those two are the Negretto of this series. And she speculated we should assume that 7 and 8 will be the Albedo, and 9 and 10 will be the Rubetto, and those will correspond with the first 3 books in the series, the way the Harry Potter things worked out. Well, this got a lot of attention. As I said, Louise immediately jumped on this and wrote, typical Louise, brilliant work on how the first 3 books did work that way as reverse alchemy. And then Louise wrote a post about Running Grave as the first Albedo piece. So we've got, the 2 Negretto things work, and that the second book in the set was named Ink Black Heart. We didn't have the death of Sirius Black, but we had a title screaming black, and it's a pretty dark book. They go underground, and all sorts of crazy things inside that book. And so that seemed to work. And then Louise wrote her piece about Running Grave and all of its Albedo elements. A lot of moisture there. And I'm going to post a link downstairs to the Farting Sofa Faculty Lounge post in which Louise wrote all that stuff up. To my knowledge, no one's written about the alchemical stuff inside Hallmark Man. It may be all through Louise's, chapter by chapter readings, but I'm not gonna go through all those to find that. So in this post, I tried to say, is Hallmark Man the Albedo post on extended play theory? That's a roundabout way of talking about that. And why do I think it probably is? Well, she signaled that when she titled the book Hallmarked Man, which is a reference to the silver thing and all the silver inside the thing. And we go to an island. There's also the water elements inside this one as well. So I'll be looking at those. And that's going to be a real thumbnail sketch. I'm not going to do the page by page. Here's all the Albedo symbols inside this work. And then I'm going to be talking about, I will have written, Nick. I love using the future perfect tense. By the time this post goes up, I will have written about 10 alchemical images from Hallmark Man. Okay,
and they are the images from Abraham's dictionary.
Yeah, and this maybe it's because I just finished reading I finished writing the Cryptonyms post, Nick, where you know how I do this. I get the name.
Yeah.
And if I find it curious, it's not, Bob Smith or something. I will take down Rainey and Wilson's, which is the Oxford Dictionary of English Surnames, that Rowling posted a picture of it at one point, right, on her website. That was your work. That was some of your original work. And so we know she has that book on the shelf. I pull that book down and I look up the name inside that book. And sometimes she uses, that book is really delightful in that it has 7 or 8 names underneath one name. And so she'll use like the 8th name on the list, and you've got to go back and find what the first name was. That book is pretty well dog-eared now. But as often as not, you're going to find that book inside Rainey and Wilson.
Yeah.
That's going to be good for the last name or the surname. Then you've got to play with the first name, see how those two work together, and then match them up with the character. And that's a free association exercise, Nick. And I love doing that. That may be something that Rowling too is like, I want to throw a name out here and just see what the nutcakes do at Hogwarts Professor for this name. But as often as not, it gives you a fun.
It's a joyful exercise. So just one of my favorites, Rena Little, and the Alice connection was just a joy when you realize it.
Yeah. Seriously, what happens to Alice when she grows up?
Yeah.
But but also in Rena Little, just to go down that rabbit hole, there's the Jewish issue.
Yeah.
That Ben and Rena both have, Hebrew backdrops, and that Rowling is talking about anti-Semitism in the UK right now, especially so much of it is driven by Muslim terrorism.
Yeah.
Now, Rowling's been talking about anti-Semitism on the left since at least Lethal Light.
Oh, a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is not something that she's just writing about now in light of current events. And forgive me, people are thinking that I'm writing about, the Hafsa Muhammad name is really the big tell in that respect.
Yeah.
We're going back to cryptonyms from alchemy here, but the Hafsa Muhammad thing, that was part of the delay in writing this thing, because I had to do so much research. I believe it or not, folks, my Arabic is pretty weak. I have no idea what these things mean. But the incredibly sympathetic character of Hussein Muhammad, and the Dickens-esque child in the wheelchair, Hafsa Muhammad, that people are protecting. You're tracking down this woman, this young child. How dare you? There's hints of the controversy right now in the UK about whether you can make any criticisms of Islam and the implicit anti-Semitism in Islam today, especially as experienced in the UK. That's where it's really coming to Rowling's attention. It's certainly true in Muslim majority countries, but it's also true in the UK. So Rowling has put Hafsa Muhammad in here, and the wonderful dad, the character Hussein Muhammad. He's friendly, he's hardworking, he adores his daughter, who's handicapped. He says about her that her name means, lion cubess. It's a little girl lion. But if you look up Hafsa Muhammad, Nick, if you look up Hafsa, it's the name of one of Muhammad's wives. And it's one of the most common names in Islam. It's an Islamic marker that an Islamic family puts on their child to communicate to the world, as if, how she appears is not visible enough evidence that she's a Muslim. And it's coming from a guy whose name is Hussein Muhammad, which is not a real name. That Muhammad as a last name really only occurs as Mahamud, as a commonplace. Muhammad, though, Nick, you go through the baby data on England and Wales. Muhammad is far and away the most common birth name right now in England and Wales. Even more so if you include other spellings of Muhammad, in which it's twice as frequent as the next most common name. Usually different.
I think is Noah at the moment.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which, that if you look at those lists, the differences between frequencies and names is usually under 100. That these names are pretty tightly grouped. There's not, to have a standout name is unusual, and to have one that is twice as common as all the others. Like usually you can say 1 to 10 of most common names. It's going to be maybe 1,000 between 1 and 10, because they're that tightly grouped. Muhammad is what, 3,000 or 4,000 more common than the one underneath that. It's an extraordinary gap. And so she makes Muhammad the guy's last name and makes Hussein the first name, when Hussein is one of the most common Muslim surnames. So she's got the guy's name upside down. I don't know if that makes him more sympathetic or what she meant to do with that. It probably even had Muslim readers saying, "Why are you doing that?" But why she's including this incredibly sympathetic Muslim family inside the series is because of what else she does in Hallmark Man. She has the whole Neil Semple Ben Liddell story, and the hell of Daesh and ISIS throwing bodies into a pit. It's that nightmare image of the ugly side of Islam. And Nick, the Westminster terrorist attack features in this story. Strike is right there when
the middle-aged
Islamicist.
have-a-go hero.
That's right. That's right. And where Strike has to fight back his desire to enter into the fray, which may be a sign of Rowling's desire to say unkind things about Islamicists that she's refraining from. And we get Hafsa Muhammad as the nuance thing. Hey, let's not go all Islamophobic on this. Let's have a really sympathetic character. Let's wrap him in the flag. Now, Ed Shardlow talked about how British the lion is to people in England. It really is a subliminal sign of the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, the Welsh flag has a dragon on it, I think, Nick, but everything else in the UK is lions.
The lions really is English.
Okay.
As it's depicted, the three lions, sometimes described as leopards, but that's heraldry. But it's the symbol of England. There is a lion that is a symbol of Wales. Owen Glyndŵr, one of the last princes, had a flag with a lion on it. There's also a Scottish lion, but really, the symbol for Wales is the dragon. The symbol for Scotland is the unicorn, and the symbol for England is the lion. There is a nursery rhyme, actually, the Battle of the Lion and the Unicorn is all about England and Wales.
And it also plays in Lewis Carroll's Alice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. But the lion, if you say a character's name is a lion, and that character is in a group which is not especially considered to be British.
Yeah.
That's to wrap them in the flag somehow. Yeah. And we've had an Aslan reference as well, which even though the word is, I don't speak Turkish, but supposedly the word is the word for lion in Turkish. Now, but Lewis adopts it and makes this most British Christian symbol. So yeah, the names thing, Nick, is when you really get into it, you get Rowling as a writer of nuance and her intertextuality or literary illusion work with Liddell.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and you get Essex Girls, Nick, which
yeah.
There were a couple of things in there that were so British. I thought, wow, like Branson versus Brantfoot. I mean, you made the case that Brantfoot was Boris Johnson, and I'm convinced you're right. Just especially the stuff with the television shows, that's so Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Right? But do you think there's also Branson in there, and that's where the name comes from?
It's possible. I would say it's more tangential because when as a class-conscious British person, I think of Branson. I think of faux working class. So actually, he has a middle class, lower middle class background, but he certainly presents as working class in his accent and mannerisms and vocabulary.
I think that would drive someone like Rowling crazy.
Yes.
When she comes from an honest lower middle class background, because really, just reading his Wikipedia page, that's not a that's not that. But the guy owns his own islands and he's a tax cheat. I know she doesn't like that, and apparently he's an Epstein, friend. So I know she's not going to be on board with that. So I mean, maybe it works. And then, but then there's the Essex Girl thing. That was fun because Kenneth Ramsey, I couldn't find. First of all, Nick, do you have your notes still from the astrological thing? Do you have your notes on how there's like a name for every astrological sign? So Ramsey is Aries. I don't have my notes on that anymore.
I'll have to try and find them.
We'll have to open that up. But Ramsey is actually a town in Essex. Yeah. And forgive me, Nick, it's like when you talk about Gloucestershire and all these places, I'm like, well, whatever that is. I have no idea. It's
So
probably like when Americans talk about North Dakota, you're like, oh yeah, North Dakota.
yeah.
That would be the state north of South Dakota. Um,
So Essex is the county. So as you follow the Thames out of London, the first county you come to following the Thames is Essex. So it is sort of the Thames estuary. It's east of London and east and south of London. Essex is the East Saxons. So they were sort of opposite to Wessex, which is the West Saxons.
Now, does Ramsey? I should have consulted with you before I posted the cryptonyms thing. Does the name Ramsey suggest Essex to people in England?
I'm
saying that because Rainey
no.
Wilson says, when you go to Rainey and Wilson, you look up Ramsey, it says from Essex.
Yeah.
That's all it tells you.
Yeah. So no, it doesn't immediately leap to mind as an Essex place.
All right. Well, I leapt from it anyway, using Rainey and Wilson as my rationalization that it is an Essex name. To say that Kenneth Ramsey is the male equivalent of an Essex guy, in that he's pretending he's trying to be as attractive as he possibly can be, and it comes off as a miserable fail. And the Kenneth thing goes back to Ken.
Yeah.
The Scottish word for perception and understanding. And so he's a Mason. He's trying to get that upper class tint, whatever, or atmosphere about himself by being a man with secret knowledge. And that's why he's in a higher class. But am I wrong, Nick? In Hallmark Man, the class markers are that Kenneth Ramsey is a pretender. He's not really of his wife's class.
No, that's right. And even his wife would be, I guess, middle class, but of history. So of an old family company would give it a certain cachet, a certain prestige. Ramsey is not that.
No. But the Essex Girl reference is a reference to I don't know which came first, Nick. Was Essex Girl already a thing before The Only Way is Essex? Or was Towie the cause of the Essex Girl thing?
The Only Way is Essex certainly massively popularized it. So a man on the Celtic fringe as I am, I had never heard of it prior to The Only Way is Essex becoming a cultural phenomenon.
But what is The Only Way is Essex? I mean, it's a reality
TV program that basically shows young people from Essex and their daily lives, and it showcases a type of person, young, early 20s, aspirational, working class, very focused on image and possessions, and maybe not the most articulate or perceptive people in the world.
Really, Nick, it's wonderful to watch you walk through this minefield. This is so much fun. I said in the article that Essex Girl was kind of the equivalent of Valley Girl, and I think, on your correction, that it's much more like Jersey Girl.
Yeah, I think so.
And these are people that have silicone breasts and orange skin, and blonde streaks in their hair, and tight dresses, high heels, usually white stilettos for some reason. White stilettos is a thing.
Yeah.
It's not that white stilettos were, I mean, white stilettos, Elizabeth Taylor wore white stilettos and nobody
Not
accused her of being an
not
Essex
not
girl. I mean,
not after Labor Day, she didn't.
really. My education about the UK is just so, there's so many
I,
blind spots and
well,
lacuna.
I think that's a US thing, Labor Day. We don't have it over here, but I think that's one of the social mores of American society is ladies shouldn't wear white shoes after Labor Day.
Wow. See, it's not just UK, it's fashion in general. I'm just totally a Nimrod on these things. Anyway, I mean, this is the kind of thing that the names conversations brings all this stuff up. You get into, class distinctions and, um, oh, well, whether I'm right or wrong about Ramsay being from Essex, you do get Kenneth Ramsay's dimensions if you include him as an Essex guy. All right, back to the alchemy. What I'm doing with the alchemy is what I did with the cryptonyms. Is instead of using Rainey and Wilson, I'm using a book, which has become really the go-to book. I've got 3 or 4 other alchemical dictionaries, Nick. It's a thing. You go to Amazon and type in alchemical dictionary, and you're going to get 3 or 4 books. This one I think is the best, and the reason I think it's the best is because it's literary. It really is about, Lindy Abraham had already written Marvell and Alchemy. It really put her to the forefront of literary alchemy, and its place in English literature as a stream inside the larger currents of English lit, from Chaucer to J.K. Rowling. She hasn't mentioned J.K. Rowling in here at all because this came out in what, 90, 91. I think that Rowling was more than familiar with Marvel and alchemy. We've discussed that previously. And what I've done here was I looked at Hallmark Man. We went through that slow reading, charting each one of the parts. And readers like Sandy Hope and Ed Shardlow and yourself, Nick, were saying, wow, we're seeing a lot of lions in here. Yeah. And I confess it really hadn't struck me. But doing the slow reading, there were a bunch of signs and symbols that repeated themselves. Some of them were like fish, and that brings you to the albedo element type thing. It's characters underwater. That's kind of a given. We have basically a robin and strike living in water in a bowl inside the agency. That's quite the pointer to the albedo part of the series. But the fish itself, not so much. The fish doesn't get an entry inside Abraham's dictionary, but lions do, and other things do, Nick, that were real jumpers, like incest is a big deal in alchemy. Well, incest, Nick, plays a part in in Hallmark Man and in the series. And then things like Jason and the Argonauts. We get Jason Knowles, and there's one other Jason. Ed put this in the comments right underneath my cryptonyms post. We get a couple of Jasons, and then we get Jason adjacent pieces. It turns out that if you look up Jason and the Argonauts, you find out that Castor and Pollux were his crew members. It's like, okay, and then you find out that Cupid is an entry, and you find out that, oh, well, you just look at the post. I mean, you see that there are all these things in here that suggest that this mythological element is going to have this larger role because Rowling is playing on the alchemical, isn't it? Right? Now, so what I'm doing now is I'm taking those things that we've seen inside the books, very much like a name, and then looking in the book and seeing if there's a match. And that's very different than what I did with Troubled Blood. With Troubled Blood, I thought this is a Negretto book. This is just like Order of the Phoenix. what kind of transformations do we see inside this book? Where is Strike broken down? Well, in Troubled Blood, wow. I mean, I wrote, some people consider that the best thing I ever wrote. Kelly Loomis, of all people, who's read everything I've ever written, I think, she said, John, this may be the best post you've ever put up on Hogwarts Professor. I thought, wow, okay. It was called Troubled Blood, Strike's Transformation, and went through this as 10 points of Strike's transformation in the series and how it's a Negretto. I didn't do that with this. I haven't written the Hallmark Man, the albedo element. Instead, I've gone through it like the names and just said, well, let's look at these things that are like that. So it's very different for me. It's much more tentative because I'm not as committed as I am to Catherine's extended play theory. I'm hesitant, just like I am with things like double ring theory and stuff.
Yeah.
Until we get to all 10 books, Nick. I mean, when I charted Harry Potter, it was 2010, Nick. It was 3 years after Deathly Hallows came out. People had been talking about it, the series as a ring, from Order of the Phoenix forward, because we had our graduate student friend at Fordham that lived with chiasmus and said, "Oh, look, we got 3 and 5. This whole thing is going to be a chiastic structure." That work, though, really couldn't be done convincingly until we had all 7 books.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to be able to really drill on this until we do that. Again, Louise did Ink Black Heart. No, she did Running Grave. And it's being an albedo novel, and that's done work. Yeah. And I think this work too, for reasons discussed in the piece, is also an albedo novel. But does that mean that these points where we see curious things inside Hallmark Man don't have their own weight? That's where I'm leaning right now. So I'm going to go there first. But that raises a bigger question, Nick, about how Rowling's alchemy, is it another tool in the shed, or is it driving the cart? Is this the horse pulling the shed in the cart?
So is it the tool to create the book, or is it the point of the book?
Yeah. I mean, and this gets into the integration of these tools, like psychomachia and literary alchemy. I think those are really largely the same thing.
Yeah.
And the Christian symbolism, as much as it's about restoration tantamount to resurrection, that's pretty much like psychomachia and literary alchemy. All 3 of those things are the same. But when you see Jason and the Argonauts appearing at this point in the series, Nick, in book 8, and the suggestion that that's how we're going to see in the next 2 books, I put it as a joke inside the Cryptonins book, paging, Dimitra Femi, because how mythology works, especially Greek mythology, is such a complex weave.
Yeah.
I'm going to need some help on that. But that's where I'm going, is that that we can assume, I think, we can use as a tentative idea, a theory going forward, that we've had 2 Negretto books, we've had 2 albedo novels, and the last 2 books are going to be Ribetto pieces.
Wow.
And that the 10th book will have something to do with red in the title.
Okay.
The way that we got Ink Black Heart and Hallmark Man, that were for those with eyes to see, Nick, those were in-your-face markers for alchemical stages. And that she puts them at the end of the couplet, the way she did the death of the characters in the last 3 Harry Potter novels. I mean, I've got some resistance to this, especially in light of the work that I know that Ed is doing with the Ichabod and Hallmark Man, and my own work showing that the first 7 books work as a set, a very tight set. But extended play, we'll see. Anyway, it's been a week. It's been a week.
It certainly has.
Of writing and thinking.
Which
apologies. So we had the Squib piece. We had the Ray Livingston thing, which is its own study. We had the Cryptonyms piece, and now the alchemy set. I
mean, I was going to ask, well, what's coming up this week, but I'm a little frightened to get you to overcommit again.
Well, it's funny how these weeks turn into months, Nick. But anyway, when I talk about next week, we're going to see this. The next Livingston chapter, I think, will be of real interest to people that like the biographical side of things. Nick, because Livingston in this next chapter talks about the inspiration of stories.
Okay.
And I haven't read it closely. I haven't done the week of reading it for typos and finding links and all that stuff, the day of that. But I suspect that as much as we're going to get bibliographical inspiration and the play of Harold Bloom's book about the Oedipal relationship, that writers have such insecurities about books that have come before them that they rewrite them to own them themselves. I think Livingston's going to address that, so I'm excited about that. Reading that myself, more or less putting it up. I've promised a 3rd Cryptonym post, but we see it took me 5 months to write the second one of that series. But there's really some fascinating names in that list. The 3rd Cryptonym list I've already made up. It's Ottilie. It's Jim Todd or Jim Philpott or Todd Jameson, however you want to do it. There's Calvin Osgood, Sophia Medina. Anything with Sophia in it's going to get my attention right away. There's Gretchen Schiff, Sapphire Nagel, Susan Iverson, Kim Cochran. Yeah, that's going to be a combination. Kim Cochran and Ottilie, and why she's choosing a French spelling for Ottilie rather than the more British spelling. Is that just a Bijou thing? Anyway, and then the Nancaros. We got 2 new names for the Nancaros in this book: Trevick and Peggy. Carmen Ellicott. We talked a little bit about that, and I'm going to talk about Dirk and Barnaby in there as well. And then the 2 names I'm really most excited about, because I'm working on the alchemy right now, is Ralph Lawrence and John Auclair. John Auclair is really the marker the names marker for the book being the albedo, because Auclair, as it's spelled, is literally clear gold. AU being the symbol of that, and clear gold, Nick, in alchemy is silver. So the John Auclair is the guy coming into the silver shop to buy silver. That was just too much. It's Rowling just really leaning into it. And that Ralph Lawrence is coming back is a marker, even though that's not his real name, because Lawrence is really the French word for golden one. And in the Ribetto, we're going to get some of that. So that's exciting. Maybe he's the people like to talk about the yellow stage of alchemy in between those things, especially the Jungian types. Rowling hasn't used it so much, except for the alchemical wedding of the Weasleys and what was the French woman's name, Nick?
Flem.
Fleur
Delacour.
Fleur Delacour, yeah. That's the only Citronatus that we get, or the yellow stage in Harry Potter. But Ralph Lawrence, maybe if he's only in this book, he's that sign. I don't think so. I think Ralph Lawrence is going to play a bigger part in this is our trilogy theory, that Ralph Lawrence has been introduced. And now, like Johnny Rokeby, he's going to be appearing more in the next 2 books. Anyway, I'm writing that third thing. So as I posted in the first week, I think, of Hallmark Man, there's more than 150 names in Strike 8. I mean, we've got an absolute avalanche of characters and new names. And so in my list I just read to you of those 11 names that I'm working on, or 12 or 13, isn't the one you really want to know about. Tell me the one you really want to know about. That is so much fun writing those posts. I can say that I love having written them more than I enjoy writing them, but that's true of almost all writing. There is that moment of discovery when you do the, oh, Essex girl, this is so funny, but that's that. And then if that weren't enough, I'm going to try to finally put up the introduction to Harry Potter for Grown-Ups, Volume 1, Philosopher's Stone. That's going out to everybody, even though it's going to be only for paid subscribers after that. And that's been tough for me because I wrote up my notes for that to sell to an agent, when now I have to write the introduction so it's actually for readers of Harry Potter rather than people that want to sell books about Harry Potter. It's quite a different introduction. And I'm excited about that because it's really a book that I'm writing for my own children, Nick. They grew up with Harry Potter, to include the nuns in Greece. They grew up with this borderline memorized knowledge of Harry Potter. And now all of them, except for the nuns, have their own children. And those children are at the age now where they're about to read those books to them. My children probably had a more profound understanding of Harry Potter than most, just from dinner table conversation. But like everybody else in Generation Hex, coming to it as adults, as grown-ups, it's different than when they read it as a child. And they're fully educated now, except from the lifetime of experience. And it's informed by that lifetime of experience, but they went to school and they learned certain things. Now they're able to grasp the things that when we talk about the alchemy and the chiastic structure and the Christian symbolism, and the debate that Rowling is fostering between the psychological and the spiritual inside the book. Wow, there's a lot of stuff there. So I'm really excited about writing that book and about putting up the introduction next week.
Wow.
And another thing my wife is doing is we have found a platform for the online courses we'll be teaching. And we're going to try to be posting some old lectures that I've done, that I did for the first iteration of my online class. And we're going to see if people can sign up for those classes. The paid subscribers will get those classes for free. Everybody else will have to pay something nominal to look at those things. Anyway, that's what we're working on here, Nick, in Belton. And God willing, I'll film a new clip for the opening part of the show so you can see the beauty of South Carolina. I hope with my neighbor's chickens who walk around my backyard. If I can get the film of me walking out on the back porch and the chickens all scrambling, that will be entertaining. That will be entertaining.
I want to see a video of the chickens following you, John. I want to see you as a messianic leader of chickens.
Sorry, no St. Francis things here.
No,
no doves coming down from the sky. And these are some real bantams. I mean, these are some real chickens, Nick. This is anyway. What are you doing next week? What are you doing, Nick?
Well,
you're going to edit this post. I mean,
I'm gonna edit this post and send that out. I'm reading at the moment Cervantes, so Don Quixote de la Mancha, which I've been meaning to read for a long while. It's I'm finding it a bit of a slog.
Yeah,
I'm on the
I've
cusp.
never gotten past the first 7 or 8 chapters. I forgive
but
me.
Really, you get to 7 or 8 chapters on Don Quixote and you've got the joke. And don't get me wrong, it's a brilliant joke. It's a really good joke. And I'm reading it coming off the back of Fairy Queen. And of course, a lot of the jokes are exactly poking fun at that idea of the knight errantry and courtly love and all of that. So the jokes are hitting home. But I'm coming towards the end of the part one now, and the same jokes a little bit. So I'm gonna give it a little more, and then I'm in the hunt for another book.
Oh no! Oh no! Well, I'm not going to say anything, Nick, because this is going to rebound on me and hurt me. I think I've got too many other things in the fire, as they say. But yeah, seriously, the work that we're doing. I hope that you'll be working, Nick, on your Blake video.
Yeah.
Or just making your notes for it, because that's going to come up on us really quickly. We're going to have this course this summer. We need to have that lake video. It's this. Gosh, I'm finally coming back. Oh, there we are. I've been reading from notes. All right, those are all my promises. Okay. And those of you who know the worth of my promises in terms of work to be done will take it with not a grain of salt, but an entire salt flat.
As I always say to my wife, but I'll turn it over to you. If John Granger says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. There's no point reminding him every 6 months.
Yeah, ugly. But we're still, Nick, I think we can still claim that we're doing the most important work in Rowling fandom. I know that this drives people crazy when we do it, put that thing up there. But again, to all these secret subscribers to our site that have hidden their names so that they're not out there, and to whether they're among the harpies or whether they're in Rowling's secret enclave, where they get all the jokes at Rowling's dinner parties. Did you see that thing on Squibs? Did you see that thing on Squibs?
We are an open house. We welcome one. We welcome all. John, as always, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you to all our subscribers, particularly our paid subscribers.
One more note, Nick, about your T-shirt. We're going to have to get a Hogwarts Professor T-shirt. So I want to invite all of our subscribers to submit, pictures of
design competition.
Design competition.
Okay.
Exactly. Mugs, T-shirts, certainly hoodies.
Yes.
Anything that people sell in merchandise.
The chosen design will win an autographed copy of one of John's books. How does that sound?
I've got I own, the Tyndale sold me their complete collection of what is it? How Harry Cast His Spell. So I can't now. If you live in Tasmania, I'm sorry, or even if you live in Eastern Wales, I'm not sending you this book. Nick. Please, let's have some fun. Let's give Nick a new T-shirt. I will pay for Nick's new T-shirt here. This Hogwarts Professor thing. There is a picture of the two of us, Nick, that is T-shirt worthy.
Yeah.
I am the much more concentrated, version, and you're the dissipated, elongated, person. But
everyone says, Nick, why is John sitting down?
You said his throne. I was in the throne room. I am glad that when we put these videos up, it looks like we're roughly the same height.
Yeah. John, thank you ever so much.
Salute. And yeah, thanks everybody who subscribes and for Unit for editing this stuff.
Yeah. Take care.